Pielo.
How do you create an ecosystem where people are incentivized to not steal your IP and not build it elsewhere?
The way technology works and the way regulation is set, controlling IP is not a feasible thing. That's not something you could do as you did before. On today's episode, we have Justin Alanis. Justin is the co-founder of the former StoryDAO, now StoryCo. StoryCo aims, it's done a fantastic job at producing decentralized media. I will be discussing with Justin the future of NFTs and storytelling. There's a lot of discussion on how these new technologies pose an opportunity for storytellers and media creators worldwide. This is a fantastic conversation. We talk about memes, about distribution, about the business models. And for those of you who are familiar with it, StoryCo is one of the most interesting projects out there. So I invite you to check it out. As always, there's a lot of links in our show notes. We'll be super happy to keep you posted and have a conversation with you all. And do go check them out. So Justin, welcome. It really is an honor to have you here with us in NFTs.
Thanks, Camilo. Happy to be here and excited for this conversation.
I know the whole story, but why don't you tell us a bit about StoryCo and StoryDAO and what actually this is and how has it evolved over the last months?
Yeah, sure. You mentioned that we've gone through a recent, I guess we'll call it a rebrand. We started off our journey as StoryDAO, and we've recently rebranded to StoryCo. But originally, a little over a year ago now, my brother and I started and founded StoryCo together. My brother came from a production background, a Hollywood background, where he was working with Tyler, the Creator, and he created this amazing platform that allowed Tyler to connect directly with his fans called Golf Media. And they were able to sell merch through that and create short form content where they would actually bring his fans into the creative process. I was getting deep into the Web3 ecosystem. I joined a bunch of different decentralized organizations, was mostly doing investing. I previously ran and sold a technology company back in 2018. And that experience, both running that technology company and also getting into Web3, it really opened my eyes to the idea that there are so many creatives out there, and there's these new models and new technologies that are coming about that would allow for new ownership, new access models that today or previously we didn't have. And with JP's experience, he saw how many creative people were out there around the world helping with these Hollywood level productions, and how the Hollywood system really is quite broken, where you need to get into Hollywood, hire an agent, have a manager, grind within a system that may not be a fit for you in order to help produce premium content within that system. And so together, our collective experiences really led us to founding StoryCo.
That's pretty cool, Justin. And that's definitely the angle we wish to approach with the episodes, storytelling on the blockchain. I don't know if you're familiar with John Rogers and Carly Riley's podcast, Blockbuster. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how does, since you have such an insider's knowledge on how do you envision blockchain and Web3 technology disrupting traditional storytelling in the industry?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's definitely a piece of the equation, but we don't think it's the whole equation for how entertainment is going to be disrupted. We think it's actually a convergence of many technologies that are happening, these new paradigms that are happening at once, and Web3 is a big piece of that. But StoryDAO, and this is partially the reason that we shifted away from just being StoryDAO. Number one, it didn't represent truly the ethos of the business, because the business is a centralized company, ultimately, where we're bringing in a community of creatives to help us build out these productions. And we're opening up this software so that people from anywhere can create amazing new stories and productions on the StoryCo platform, build an audience and a fan base around their stories and their productions, and then bring those fans and creators in as co-owners and co-creators of those stories. And so blockchain certainly has a central element for what we're doing. We started as StoryDAO, as I said. We created this producer token community, which you're a producer token member, around our core mission. So it's really about 300 people from in and around creative spaces and business building spaces who we wanted to bring closer to what we were doing and have this almost creative brain trust help us think through how we could disrupt this old legacy system and do that from the inside out. And we felt that that needed to happen with a group of people who were early believers in what we were doing. And so we created this token community. We created a token. We sold that for zero point 0.1 ETH to folks like you who came into that community and have created and established this amazing group and community around it. Secondly, we are building out this platform where we're leveraging different things different elements of the blockchain. So NFTs are definitely a component of what we're doing, where we feel that creators being able to monetize their fans are a central element of how new IP will be born, so that you don't have to build in isolation. You don't have to build in this kind of like in behind closed doors and then release something to the public and hope that they love it. Or even in the current system where you build in these behind these closed doors and then you release it to like an Amazon or a Netflix and then you don't even have a connection with your fans today. This is an opportunity to become much more close to your fans, monetize directly through things like NFTs, but there's also elements of merch and licensing opportunities that happen off the blockchain as well, which could eventually incorporate blockchain. But legacy licensing companies, for example, don't really use blockchain today, but I see the path for where blockchain could be leveraged there. And then there's components of ownership that we're embedding into our ecosystem as well, where we believe strongly that creators who enter into these productions and who help both us as the core producer of some of our stories, but also new storytellers that come onto our platform and create net new stories, they can then put information out there or opportunities out there to other creators and give them ownership in this underlying IP, which today in Hollywood, that really doesn't exist. If you think about it, right? If you create something, even if you're one of the chief creators in Hollywood today, you sell something to Netflix, they own the rights to this piece of IP in perpetuity across the world because of the way that streaming works now. And so those are really fundamental shifts that we think can empower this new type of creator economy where people are ready to participate in user-generated content and this network creativity for premium content as well.
Justin, there's so many I want to like go into and flesh out. So I want to begin. And at the beginning of your intervention, you talked about like there's a convergence of like medium and ideas that empower like this next generation storytelling. Why don't you go like a little bit deep on okay, so we have blockchain and NFTs, and that's one thing, and like what else is out there?
Yeah, we think there's really three different pieces well, there are actually really four different paradigm shifting movements that are happening at the same time right now. Blockchain's one of them. AI is certainly one of them, where now all of a sudden you can empower people from anywhere who haven't historically been considered creatives now to give them the tool set where they can actually be a creative. Now, that's a powerful shift, right? Where now instead of going into Photoshop or After Effects or any of these other like pretty sophisticated softwares and some softwares now that Hollywood uses that you could never afford, even creatives could never afford it or have access to it. And now AI lowers the barrier to entry for all of that, right? And so now it's opening up new opportunities for people to actually become creators. That dovetails into the third, which is user generated content. We're seeing this right now throughout the world and throughout existing technology companies with things like TikTok and Instagram, or Roblox is a great example of this, or Steam is a great example of this, where people are creating their own games within these ecosystems. And Steam and Roblox have created the underlying technology to allow their users their fans to be able to create these games, create robust economies within their game ecosystem, and then bring new fans into this ecosystem. And so this user generated content new paradigm is happening right now. But what we haven't seen is we haven't seen that user generated content exist for premium content, right? Because premium content really still operates in a vacuum within Netflix and Amazon and Apple today. But given now what's happening with AI, we think that now there's going to be this new paradigm of UGC that's happening to have a group of people come together that can create user generated content, that the tapestry of that user generated content can manifest itself into a Hollywood level production. And then the fourth is spatial computing. You saw that Apple announced their new headset the other week. And we think that this is a powerful new paradigm as well, where now all of a sudden people historically, you haven't really had a need or a desire to get outside of this kind of 2D framework that we've been operating in with our computer screens historically. And now we think that this new spatial computing platform is going to usher in a whole new way of delivering immersive content to people.
That's amazing, Justin. I'd like to like add to that conversation, to that idea. There's two things I really like about like the new age of entertainment. One is like the how we like interact with screens. Like first it was like cinemas and there was like really big screens like 20 feet from us, and then there were TVs and there's like 2 meter things and they were like 5 feet from us, and then we have cell phones and they're like really small and they're like inches from us, and now we're ushering like this new age where like we actually live within the screens. And when I saw like the Vision Pro, it's like, yeah, that makes total sense. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing I like to, I love this idea of UGC, like I don't know if invading us is the right word, but like that this era of infinite content when people can go like, this is what I tell my grandparents all the time, like you're actually gonna be like, I want to be like in a Harrison Ford type movie where I'm the protagonist and like the romantic interest is X or Y or Z. And like, yeah, I'm pretty excited about this new era of, and seeing what creative people are gonna come up with this. So yeah, why don't you tell us, because I think that like it's one thing to talk about these type of things and to imagine them, but you guys actually built like and it was a fantastic experience, Debris. I don't know if what's the actual name, and with Stephanie Beatrice and Rosa, which I think about all the time. Why don't you tell us about like that? Was that an MVP, or like what was the thought behind that?
Yeah, so what you're talking about is our what we're calling our prologue activation. It's really an opportunity for community to get more deeply involved. We believe that ultimately fandom, there's a spectrum of fandom that exists out there that's not being tapped into today, right? If you think about the way that Netflix and Amazon are mostly tapping into consumers, Disney does a little bit better job of this with their theme parks, right? But you have consumers, then you have people who want to be kind of more immersed in the story. You have people who want to participate, have people who want to support, people who want to co-own, and people who want to co-create alongside of it. So there's this whole spectrum of fandom that today is not really being tapped into. And our first production that we've been working on for the last year is being written by a really amazing writer out of Hollywood named Kyle Killen, who wrote the Halo series on Paramount Plus and a number of other Netflix series. We've paired him with these artists named Shelby and Sandy, who are fairly prolific and amazing artists with a really celebrated following. And then we've paired them with these musicians named Superposition, Grammy-nominated musicians, to do all the score of the disco ball. And what we're trying, so we're producing this first production called the Disco Ball, and what we're trying to do with it is we're trying to create a new media, a new type of media where it's faster, cheaper to create, but still represents it's the way I think about it is like the step right before what you make a movie or a TV show, like all the scene cuts, all the kind of and even more immersive than that, right? And so it's not just storyboards. For example, we're actually creating the disco ball as a 3D rendered environment where you then we're like actually moving the camera around these scenes. And yes, we have different storyboard elements that come into the scenes, but we have then like full dialogue, full score, full audio, 3D rendered characters and settings associated with that scene. And so we've been creating all of this behind the scenes. And the thing that's cool about it is it's all browser based. You don't need to download anything in order to consume this narrative. And it's like a scrolling animatic almost in the way that we're delivering it. And so chapter one of the Disco Ball is actually going into beta next week with our producer token community. So we're really excited to get people like your feedback on it. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to start building some momentum around the Disco Ball. And so we launched a prologue activation around a super secretive society called Debris. It's the Disco Ball Research and Investigation Society. And it almost played out, it did play out, not almost, it did play out like an ARG, an alternative reality game, this society, the Disco Ball Research and Investigation Society, Debris, believes that there are other dimensions out there. And this all ties back to the core story that people will consume as well. And these other dimensions, we got all of our producer token holders to print flyers about strange messages that they've been seeing around the world in different cities around the world. I think we hit like 42 cities around the world that people posted these flyers in. And then we had a big public launch on Twitter that got a huge amount of interest. And then we actually dropped clues and puzzles for people to start uncovering what's actually happening with this society. And it was amazing to see the level of engagement that people went down these rabbit holes and started learning about all these different vortexes around these countries. Figured out that we're operating in a different dimension here, but it has parallels to our current dimension. And people were then finding these clues and solving these puzzles and getting what are called story moments within the Disco Ball story. And these story moments are activated on your profile of the Disco Ball of StoryCo. And now I can share that profile, and I have different badges that are part of my story pass. This is an NFT ultimately that is a soulbound NFT that represents your journey that is being cataloged through the Disco Ball experience. And the idea is that we'll reward these people who have been early participants and early engaged in the Disco Ball with all sorts of different things down the road. And so it's a way to track their participation and let people have a ton of fun along the way. And this ARG experience will continue on kind of throughout the whole story. And it's like this undercurrent of like something really interesting, almost like the Dharma Initiative with Lost, if you ever saw Lost.
I did see Lost, but I do not recall like the initiative. That being said, like there were a bunch of Disco Balls posters here in Bogota. They may or may not have been posted by me. I do gotta say though, like it was really fantastic to see like everyone like pictures from everywhere around the world, and Tokyo and Sydney, and it was fantastic. It was amazing. So Justin, just to see if I get it right, in a nutshell, basically, you guys are creating storytelling like on a on a on a different level where I'm being part of the story as it being told, and I get to showcase that fact. Like, and I get like throughout NFTs, I get to see like everyone gets to see like, okay, so this guy was a believer in this way before, and through like a story told like in an interesting fashion, right? Like not in an early bird thing, but like so he was part of the first committee that actually found out that. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's
That's
right.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and then not only that, but we've already done our first co-creation opportunity where we had so that's the fan portion of it, where now you can track and catalog your journey as a fan, but we're also doing the creator portion of it where we want to make this a co-creation platform, right? We talked about the UGC component of it, and our core creators, Kyle and us at StoryCo, who are producing this, have identified several co-creation opportunities, both within Debris and within chapter one and future chapters of the story. And the idea is that we want more and more of the story to be created by people outside of our core team. And we are actually now devising a strategy to actually give ownership over the Disco Ball to these creators. And so our first creator that answered one of our co-creation opportunities was a guy out of Nigeria named Anu. He's a student, an art student in Nigeria. Everybody loved his submissions. He was selected by our producer token community, and he created these panels for a backstory within one of the scenes. And now this guy from Nigeria named Anu is a 21-year-old in art school, right? Probably never gonna be in Hollywood, right? Otherwise, now has an opportunity to work with Kyle Killen, Shelby and Sandy, superposition, and have his story that he's actually illustrated be told within the disco ball. And it is so good. It's so amazing, and we're so excited about it. And so we're starting to open up more co-creation opportunities actually next week, so that more people can start getting ownership over the disco ball and start really starting to think about the decentralized component of this.
And that's awesome, Justin. It really sounds fantastic. I Something that's really refreshing when hearing you speak is like it seems as though you got like the business angle, like you're approaching this from a very businessy standpoint, and it's not just like the decentralized IP whatnot story we've heard 1,000 times before. Like what's the business model here? Like what's StoryCo's?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I think that there's something uh, relevant here about the idea of centralization versus decentralization. Um, we believe in the idea of progressive decentralization, and there's also a lot of like regulatory ambiguity in the United States around decentralization and tokens and things like that. And so we've always kind of approached what we've been doing as a centralized effort, with the idea that we could bring community in, give them ownership, and progressively decentralize what we're doing. But we are a centralized company. And I think the best way that you can think about what we're doing and what we're building is that we are building Steam or Roblox for stories. We're building the tool set, the infrastructure, and building out the first story to help us build out all this technology and seed the community and the co-creation opportunities and everything that we're doing. But then over time, we want to see this explosion of new stories that are happening on the StoryCo platform from people who are not part of StoryCo, right? So the disco ball is really the opportunity for us to build the tooling out in conjunction with us building out a story of our own. And now it's all about how do we build out this technology to be scalable enough so that other people can come in and build their own stories. And StoryCo then will earn a piece of revenue and a piece of the IP from every new story that's built on the StoryCo platform. And the idea and the opportunity is that each node on the network, so each node, let's say, is a story. The disco ball is a node, let's say, that there are all sorts of different nodes that can be built out around that initial core story. So the disco ball, we're telling out what we'll call the core canon. But if you think about Star Wars and what Star Wars is, it's a story of a boy, all right, on a planet called Tatooine. But if you think about what the way Star Wars has grown, it's like, you got the Mandalorian over here, you've got Boba Fett over here, you've got this whole universe. It's just a universe, right? And that's the way we think about any story really, is that they're just universes of opportunity for new stories to be told in these universes. And any story can be told in really any universe, right? You're starting to see it with Disney, and they're starting to do rom-coms on Marvel, right? And so what we want to do is create a platform, a rich ecosystem for the disco ball core story to be told, but then other people are building out backstories and side stories and new characters, and let these things start to grow a little bit more organically with the fan community and the creative community that are helping lead the charge ultimately, who we feel are the best suited to build to determining the direction of ultimately this type of IP.
Yeah, that's amazing. I do agree a lot with like that this transmedia, I guess, storytelling things where you just like pick up characters from one place and move them to another, and you get to the like, yeah, Star Wars, you get to do TV shows, and you get to do like sequels and prequels and interquels and Marvel and Star Wars and Disney, and yeah, that's amazing. There's something that's really interesting for me within this space is like the whole discussion on IP, and my perspective on it. It's like the way technology works and like the way regulation is set. Like controlling IP is not like a feasible thing. Like that's not something you could do as you did before, like where you had like, okay, so the U.S. state patent office regulates this and that, and like, how do you guys envision like the IP and like the remix of IPs and stuff like that?
So we think about well, I agree with you, first of all, right? Especially in a world where AI is going to be able to replicate pretty much anything, any voice, any character. It's the IP is going to be really hard to control ultimately. And so you have to think about it from that perspective is how do you create an ecosystem where people are incentivized to not steal your IP and not build it elsewhere in the depths of the internet, but ultimately build it within your ecosystem, right? And so that's really what we're trying to create, where the disco ball, for example, is a piece of IP, and we want to create the sandbox for anybody to come in and build interesting things off of that IP, right? So the way that we think about it is that co-creation can happen in a number of different ways. Number one, it can happen through these co-creation opportunities that come from top down, like we're doing right now. This is the way we're starting it. But ultimately, we want to build the tools out so that anybody can create within the disco ball universe this UGC, right? Where they're creating new stories, new characters, new things, and the community can ultimately vibe with certain characters, certain stories, and those certain stories may be able to be monetized separately. Maybe they're brought into core canon through some sort of voting mechanism or some committee mechanism. And so, the idea is that you should have this infrastructure that allows IP to grow a little bit more organically with your community in mind, rather than trying to like stranglehold your IP and not let anybody touch it, which is kind of the current model that exists today that we're starting to see is, in my opinion, failing.
Yeah, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree that like that's the new way things are gonna grow, and yeah, well, that's a different discussion. Justin, and like, what's the role and of course I'm asking for a friend that the role that producer token holds, like what role do we play within like the StoryCo ecosystem?
Yeah, there's going to be some really cool things. So number one, they've already played you guys have already played an important role with just helping us think through our expansion, our product, the disco ball, helping get the word out for us has been huge for us, right? Secondly, I think that there are a ton of creators within that, and so we're already starting to see some of these producer token holders starting to create in and around the disco ball, which has been amazing. And we see it as this brain trust, this creative community to help us in all sorts of different ways. And we're going to be rewarding these producer token holders in meaningful and material ways, ultimately, through things like just like low level ways like merch and NFTs, but also through co-ownership eventually. So as we release the disco ball co-ownership opportunities, we will give co-ownership opportunities and points to the producer token holders as well. And so we think of this as a symbiotic relationship where it's like you help the ecosystem, you should be rewarded from the ecosystem ultimately.
That's pretty cool. I'm super curious to see like how this plays out, right? Like we're on the make, we're making it as it goes. I wanted to gather your opinions, Justin. Sorry, on what challenges do you envision like within this new line of like groundbreaking enterprises? Like when you guys like have close discussion, like what do you say? Okay, we have to be aware of this or that or etc.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that in my perspective, represent every startup's hard, right? Every startup is difficult, no matter what, right? Roblox, I saw the chart the other day. It's like they went from like they were like really tough road for them, and then all of a sudden, just like in 1 year, they went to like a $4 or $5 billion valuation, and they struggled for a long time in order to get to where they are. We believe deeply that that we're entering into this new future of entertainment, and StoryCo will be a central player in that. But having said that, we're in a moment right now where we're probably in the midst of a recession, or maybe coming out of a recession, somewhere in that right. Venture funding is like at all time 10-year lows, 20-year lows, something like that. Uh, and we're really, I think, doing something that is really experimental, and really like at the like cutting edge of what is possible. and we're building a lot of technology in order to make that happen. And we're taking big bets, and we're doing a lot, right? We're building a production out while we're building the technology, and so it represents like it. Sometimes it feels like we're like swallowing a lot at one time, and so what we tell ourselves constantly is like, how do we focus? How do we simplify? How do we continue to build scalable technology so we're not lost in the noise of like just building out a production, and that we are a scalable technology platform and not a production studio, right? Like we don't want to be a production studio necessarily. Like maybe there will be an extension or an arm of StoryCo that has a production studio, but what we want to be really is this scalable technology platform. And we're building out some core pieces of technology in order to do that, right? There's a couple of different pieces that we've already built out. There's the consumption experience, this 3D animatic that I talked about, and the ability to engage fans through story moments and all that. There's this idea of co-creation opportunities and being able to bring new creators in and give them ownership over your piece of IP and manage all of that process. And then there's the actual like story compilation, the actual content management system, or what we'll call story management system, where the ability to basically go from an idea or a script to a fully composed and produced published story really quickly. And so that's something that we're starting to work on as well. And then there's like the whole network effects that we want to be building into our ecosystem, where we have we want to be able to have creators connect with one another. We feel like the fabric of creation happens in this network creativity, and so giving them profiles and rewards badges and ranks and basically reputation on a platform, and allowing them to connect with one another, to create with one another, represents a big opportunity for us. And then we think that education represents a huge opportunity for us as well, where if you want to do VFX today, like where do you learn to do VFX? If you want to do sound effects, where do you learn to do sound effects? We think that we could become this hub for learning, for people to come in and learn how to create, learn how to do these really interesting things that are kind of exclusive to Hollywood today. And we can be this educational hub that allows people to do that.
Just to go on, like closing the episode, there's a few questions I'd like to ask. The first one being like, you guys, it seems as though StoryCo like makes its way parallel to Hollywood, like, and you guys are pretty, like, I want to say close to Hollywood people, and like whenever you speak about StoryCo and whatever you guys are building, like what's the more traditional reaction, like how do people from the industry react to this idea?
Listen, I mean, the reality is that 97% of creators in Hollywood are unhappy with the current system, right? If Hollywood was a technology platform, its NPS would be negative, okay? And so we're dealing with this legacy system that isn't working for people today. It's working for the top 1% of the population today, of the people who are in that system today. And so we're in a privileged position where we talk to a lot of those top 1%. And when we talk to people like, let's say like Seth Rogen, he's like, I would never do this, right? It's like, well, of course, Seth Rogen, you would never do this because you can get any movie that you want or any TV show you want produced within Hollywood. But guess what? There are 99 other people who want to be Seth Rogen. And guess what? You, Seth Rogen, you're a kid from Canada who, caught a lucky break. And then all of a sudden you made it into Hollywood as a result of that. But we talked to Evan Goldberg, who's his writing partner. It's like Evan Goldberg could be running a comic shop somewhere in Canada right now, and he'd be the same creative force that he is, that the same guy that wrote Superbad, right? But instead, he's in a comic shop and running a comic shop, but yet he still has the same level of creativity that he has today. But he just didn't make it. He just didn't find that lucky break. He didn't have that lucky break. And so what StoryCo is really, where we're really focused is on those people who want to get their break, but don't want to operate within this system where they feel like they have to all of a sudden have this lucky break. We create this ecosystem where they can find it here, right? And it's a more equitable system. And so most of the creators that we talk to in Hollywood, they get it. They understand it. They've been through it. They've been in a writer's room before and killed themselves in that writer's room, had a season canceled. One of our producer token members, a guy named Sam Cotty, right? He produced this amazing animated movie named Lamia's Poem. and he sold it to Amazon. He has no idea who watched it, and no idea who it resonated with. It went on to Amazon's, top whatever for a few days, and then it's off to the library of Amazon for the rest of time. And so that creates a really difficult situation for the majority of creators who are out there.
That's pretty cool. Now, Justin, like it's been amazing. Like I was already a fan of StoryCo. Like I was a fan of StoryDAO since its early origins, but hearing you speak, like it makes me, like when I hang in that Discord, like it makes sense and everyone's really cool. Like you get a sense of like I'm part of this new thing, and it's always amazing. But hearing you actually speak, like it makes me all the more confident and happy. Like I'm a part of this, and yeah.
Thank you. Well, thanks for all your support. We're stoked to have you as a Producer Token member, and so many people like you who are so jazzed about what we're doing. And now we're entering this period where we're going to be releasing the Disco Ball very soon. We've released Debris. We're releasing these co-creation opportunities. And so I think we've got a big, 6 months ahead for us where more and more people are going to know the name StoryCo. I think, we already had 85,000 signups for the Disco Ball. But we're excited to get those rabid fans, the people who really want to be a part of our ecosystem, who really want to like explore and dig deep. And we think that we can create a ton of value. And we've already demonstrated that we can build and execute things at a really, really high level. And if you look at like what happened in the NFT space yesterday with Azuki, right? Azuki's one of the biggest names in the NFT space. They've raised maybe $50 million overall. And yet they dropped a new NFT collection that's like literally a replica of their past one, right? And people are super upset. Price is down 50%. It's like, haven't people learned yet that you can't put your money behind founders and projects that don't have a track record of successfully building something really interesting? And so we hope that people look at StoryCo and say, these are guys who are building something actually really interesting, really legitimate, and this is part of an ecosystem that I want to be a part of.
Justin, thank you so much for taking part of this. And again, of course, I talked to everyone about StoryCo, and I'll keep on spreading the word. And yeah, let's hope everyone who hears this gets interested and joins the community as well. So thank you so much. And yeah, hope to have you again sometime, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Bielo.